All right, welcome back to the DNA podcast. This is our second episode on the subject of leading with vision, and we've been joined by two incredible leaders. Pastor Lonnie Johns, who has pastored Christ Central in Lake City, Florida, since he planted the church in 1998, and then also Pastor John Teele, who pastors Voyage Church in Pace, Florida, who pastored the church, 4 years ago in 2022, and both churches are just doing incredible things in their community and God's blessing. And we've had some really interesting and I think exciting conversation around this subject of leading with vision. But last time we left off, and Pastor Lonnie was talking about this whole idea of vision, and how one time God spoke to him to stop this incredible initiative of this ALF that they had been stewarding and that God had been using in incredible ways. And the thought occurred to me that we often think that vision is starting something, but sometimes God gives us vision that requires to stop something, and that's a whole new frame of reference. And so, Pastor Lonnie, I just thought we'd start off this episode of the DNA podcast kind of going back to that subject. And I'm really curious as to how that decision came about. Like, how did you look at the natural factors of what was going on? I don't even know all the scenarios around it. And then get a clear word from God and direction about stopping. And then how did you execute that with your people?
Yeah, that was it was probably one of the most difficult leadership situations for me. It's because that ministry had been so fruitful, and that when we talk about fruitful, I'm just saying lives that were changed. Everything that we do, we have a tithe principle attached to it. So no matter what ministry, like our sports, we have 2,500 kids in it. We scholarship over 300 and something kids. On the ALF, we would have, when we went from 10 beds, we had a top one tithe bed. Then we got a 39 bed facility. We had 4 tithe beds. Then we went to built another wing and had 72 tithe beds. And so we had 8 tithe beds and 72 beds. And so that ministry was flourishing as far as, because we're not, I didn't take any money from any of these outreach ministries. And so we took profit and used it to minister to needy people. Mm-hmm. And so that was all going on. During that time, near the end of it, the community's leaders came to me, a sheriff and some commissioners, and just began to talk to me about a need in the community with the homeless. We were already doing food pantries, and so the situation, and I said, well, I will pray into it right now. We are not in a position to do something on a larger scale. And so anyway, so that was like 2 years before, but God began to deal with me about it. I began to pray into it. And so as the Vision Sunday, the second year rolled around, it was also a Shemitah year where you meet the needs of needy and all that. And God spoke to me about the homeless. I waited for his word, not for other leaders. I needed a word from God. We still had the ALF. Well, it also, around that time, 2 things happened. We got the facility over there for the homeless shelter, and that was a supernatural provision from people who didn't go to our church. And I didn't even contact them. I just on Vision Sunday, and 10 days later, business people, some of them an hour away, funded getting the building, but it was a shell. The ALF, the government had changed some of the reimbursement rules. And used to be 30 days reimbursement on services that we took care of elderly. All of a sudden, they began to change some of the laws of the land. At the same time, my missionary pastor, who was a registered nurse, who not only did our medical mission, but was my director over that, who's been with me even before Christ Central. So she had the heart of what it was all about. So she began to have a lot of health issues. And so all this was going at the same time. So I knew that 2 things were going to happen. We were going to have to quit giving away as much money and just trying to keep that alive because of the laws of the reimbursement from government for these people we were taking care of. And it was going to eat up because it was up to 6 months reimbursement, and we're having to stagger payments for 50 employees and all kinds of things. And I'm praying into this. Lord. This thing's always been able to do such ministry, but the changes. And the second point is even greater, is that the key person who I believe God brought into my life, it was one of my ministry key partners, Pastor Teresa, was unable to continue running it. So I needed to find someone else who had my heart and the heart of the vision. And so I'm praying about that. And the Lord, during a fast, a 2-week fast, the Lord revealed to me that favor was shifting. Mm-hmm. That this new, where you were dealing with this segment of needs, elderly, that now I need you to focus on the hungry and the homeless and the veterans, and that the leaders have come to you, and the church, I need you to move into that way, get fully committed to that. So this is going to be a seed. So we sold the ALF, we took money and began to build out the situation with the homeless shelter, and begin to reach more people, because we also feed families there, give boxes of food. And so, but it was difficult, but I shared that with the people. I just got up and I think honesty and transparent. Here's what we're dealing with, and here's why, from a logistics standpoint, that we've got the struggles, and from the spiritual standpoint, God is leading us into this, and this is just going to be a seed. So we'll expand ministry from just a smaller area of population to all Columbia County. And so that's part of the birthing of now all of the homeless and the veterans, and the addiction training center, and a computer training center, and a counseling center, and all those things was birthed out of that seed. But it was hard, because it had been so fruitful for elderly for so long. But then, so you have to communicate vision. Leadership never said it's going to be easy. Mm-hmm. But what I've seen is, God's been faithful. And people, when you're transparent, they know your heart, So I think as leaders, if we act like we never have struggles, or if we never have to pray into difficult decisions, and we want to kind of portray a Superman syndrome, I think that people relate to the struggles of leadership because they have struggles in their own life. And I just think we have to be honest and open, because we're following the Lord to the best of our ability. Yeah. And so that ended up being a great ministry for a lot of people, and it lives on in an expanded ministry now that ministers to all ages of people. We help elderly, homeless people. Mm-hmm. We get them off the street. If we help them get their benefits, we get them into ALFs. We minister. So I think leadership is navigating transitions, and that's really where leadership is tested. It's not when everything is great. If you're running a sailboat or a ship, man, when the waters are calm, you and I can navigate it. But when the storm happens, you better have a captain who knows how to do troubled waters. Right. Yeah. And I think leadership, we have to, in those moments, press in and really get a word from the Lord, a fresh vision. Yeah,
I think that's so important, because what I hear is you're in this moment of tension where there were natural circumstances screaming at you. But here's the way I heard it. You didn't react to the circumstances that were screaming to you. You took the circumstances to prayer. I heard you said you did the 2-week fast, and you got a word from God about this is the direction we're to go. We could look at wisdom. Wisdom might say, hey, it's time to fold this thing, right? It's time to go in a new direction. But you just didn't judge the natural circumstances, because vision and everything we're leading with requires presence. Yeah. You got in God's presence. You got a word from God, and then executed it in a wise manner. You didn't hide things from people, right?
No, I just shared. The prophet, God sent the prophet to the creek to be sustained in the famine. Mm-hmm. And it was great, man. The ravens brought the food. He had the water. Everybody else is struggling. He is prospering.
And
but there was a season that it's time to move.
Yeah.
So this is drying up because it's time for you to move. You got comfortable, but now I need you to move into a new, and that's what we got comfortable doing that. We had it down. It was great, but there's a time of movement in the community. God had more And so we have to be careful. That's what I'm just saying. I think, and sometimes God will give us a word, and we're still processing, and so God confirms the word by drying up the creek.
Yeah, that's true. But here's what happened. You had a seed of vision that you stewarded that became fruitful, but it was time to let that seed fall to the ground and die, so it could produce more fruit. And that's really the result of what happened. So leading with vision, it's exciting and it's challenging, and it requires a lot of courage from the part of the leader, right? Go ahead, John.
I just want to say one thing that I caught on that from the way we ended last episode and this, and obviously us being 4 years old, is Pastor Lonnie, how important it is that people can trust a leader.
Yeah.
When we planted our very first Sunday, a couple came, and the testimony is when they got to the car, the wife said, "There's no way those people are that real. There's something up. There's something fishy." They come back the next week. She's like, "There's no way. There's no way they're that real." Well, we're hiring her husband. He's coming on staff to take over finance now, 4 years later. And there's something about when people can say, "I trust that leader." Yes, ultimately we trust God, but man, that authenticity, and that's what I'm learning is just, man, we're just telling people, hey, like if we're learning, we're learning. And I love, Pastor Lonnie, how you said at the end of the last episode, the celebrating, because I wonder if too, with you saying, hey, we're stopping this because God said, but you're also pairing that with celebrating what happened. And if I'll say anything over the past 4 years, we might not have some of the grandest things, but my wife loves to celebrate. Say it this way, celebration is the business of heaven, the serious business of heaven. And so, man, we celebrate, whether it's 12 water baptisms, 40 water baptisms. Last year, our end of the year offering, we had $30,000 given, and we bought the AC for this building. We were so excited. This year, we just got the number of $226,000 for our end of the year offering, but we're just going to celebrate. And I think people trust the leaders who are, hey, this is what's really going on, but man, look at what God's done. And so I just picked that up from that. People want to be able to trust the leader.
Yeah, I while you were talking, John, I was reminded of something that we cast vision for at the beginning of last year, and we launched it in August, and it was a third service. And it was going well. I mean, we were growing it. We really launched it different than our other services. And some things happened after we launched it that we didn't expect. And we lost some leaders. We lost some people. Things were happening. Service was still good. We had new people that had started coming to church, and we're loving it. And at the end of last year, we started looking at each other, and we're like, this is taxing our staff. This is taxing our leaders, and we care about the health of our leaders and the people that are our volunteers, people that are on our team. And so we had to pray, and I invited my team to pray with me, and I called and got counsel from people that are on our oversight board and some friends. And at the end of the day, we really felt like the Lord said, you know what, it's time to put a pause on that. And honestly, it was tough to go before our people and say, what we had vision for, now we believe. And we believe God spoke to us to do this, and we went for it, and it was going well. And now in this season, we feel like God's saying this for wisdom, for the health of our leaders. And we had people that loved that service that came and said, Pastor Ryan, we've seen what's happened. We understand. We hate this. We love this service, but we understand. Multiple people came to that. And so it just requires, we see the circumstances, but what God's saying about it, and then executing it with courage and with transparency. And you trust the rest to God. Let's talk about casting vision for a minute, because we lead with vision, but it requires us casting vision in a way that is an invitation for people to join. No vision, especially from God, can ever be done alone. If you have a vision from God that you can do without somebody, you're mistaken. That's just something you dreamed up. I'll just give you a hint right there. But John, I want to start with you. How do you approach casting vision to your church, whether it be your congregation, your staff, your leadership team? How do you approach vision casting?
Oh man. I think ultimately we talked about earlier, or Pastor Lonnie, you mentioned the idea of like kingdom assignments and for the region. And so for us, it's really been, there's so many great churches, right, all over, and we celebrate what God's doing, but coming before the people, and both of you guys have talked about this, is just, man, we sense the Lord telling us, right, that this local body, there's so many amazing local churches and people doing different things, but this thing, right, that this past year, my wife and I in 2013 went to Thailand, and something just struck in our hearts in the fight against human trafficking. And so we've just been in that fight, no matter the season, figuring out how to support, be a part. And so this past year, personally, I love riding my bicycle. And so I decided to ride my bike from Pensacola, Florida to New York City. And we were at a conference and got connected with Hope for Justice, which is a global organization fighting human trafficking. And I was like, man, I think it'd be really cool to get the church behind this, which the vision ultimately was, this was the year we wanted to have an arm of ministry where our church is consistently in the fight against human trafficking. And not everybody wants to ride a bike, much less a bike like mine. I think Pastor Lonnie said he'll take the beach cruiser with the big seat.
I'll take the motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
Yeah, that's even better.
I'll have you follow me next time. But I remember being like, I think we're supposed to raise money. And really the big picture was, after my bike ride, our worship pastor, we host a big flag football tournament every year. But we brought that in. So we came up with the statement, break the cycle of human trafficking. But it wasn't just for someone riding a bike. We said, hey, we've got a lot of different sports ministries and just creating community. And so we've made the step, and it was in the casting the vision to say, hey, church, here's something we're going to do. And it was that faith y'all talked about earlier, because I told my wife, I was like, maybe like $30,000. She was like, nah, I think the Lord's saying $100,000. I was like, I don't think we're going to raise $100,000 with me riding a bike in spandex. Like, I just don't think people are going to be about it. And we put the vision before him, because I know she's closer to the Lord than I am. And man, it happened. Before we even left for the bike ride, all the money came in, right?
Wow.
Had our flag football tournament. Now, any sports-related events in our church, cross-board, is called Break the Cycle. All the money goes to fighting human trafficking. But it was, and this is the way I say it, how do I go about casting vision? I'm always connecting passion to purpose, because passion without purpose is pointless. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to find things that people are passionate about, right? And obviously, like we've said, we're passionate about the presence of God and the Word of God. But what are those things, all the different kinds of ministries, right? Some people are passionate about serving the homeless, and some people are passionate about coaching a flag football team for kids. What are those passions, and connect it to the purpose of God? And so anytime I cast vision, that statement, you're going to ask any of our staff, they'll quote it. Passion without purpose is pointless. And so we're going to connect those two.
Awesome. Pastor Lonnie?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about just casting.
Yeah, how do you approach casting vision to your church? To your congregation, your staff, leadership teams? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, the staff meeting is a key part of getting vision into the bloodstream of the ministry, because they're leading groups. And so I think it's important to keep them inspired, keep them seeing the vision, that they can then become carriers of it to their people that they have such close contact with. But casting vision, we do it, like I said, we have this big buildup. So January is setting the tone for the year. That's what the fasting. We press in, some people call it a sacred season, but it's a time of preparation. It's a thanksgiving and a preparation for the coming season. You're in the transition, finishing the old, going into the new. And I think it's a combination of reflection and celebration, the faithfulness of God. I think sometimes we don't take enough times to celebrate what God does. And if we just cast vision and we're continually vision casting but never celebrating, then you're not giving God the glory enough, because celebration is something, look what the Lord has done. And he told him, that's part of why Paul, when he went on mission trips, he come back to Antioch, he gave a report. I want you to know what your faithfulness has done. I want to talk about where God's planted churches and where he's gone. Those are principles that are in Scripture. He told Moses, remember, and don't let them forget. Take stones out of the middle of the Jordan and put it on the promised land side. And anytime you walk by and they ask, what are them stones, your kids? You reflect on the goodness. You're here because God brought us here. And so people show up at a campus now that's 100 acres in a building. They don't know where it started. It started in a school. They don't know it started with a few people with God speaking. And so part of that is our job is to communicate the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God, give him all the glory for anything that's done, any life that's changed, any ministry, anybody that's been fed, missions, orphanages that we build, all these things. This is God's ministry, and look what he can do with people that come together under the banner of Christ with vision and passion and give what we got, we can impact the world from here because Christ is calling it to do it. So it inspires people. And I think you can't do it just once a year. I think that you have to continually have times of inspiration, casting fresh vision, because vision leaks. And so, but that year fast, that yearly fast we do, creates them a spirit that's sensitive to God, to hear from God. And as we're casting vision, I ask them to get a vision for this year for their life. They're a priest of their home. They're a king. Let God speak to you. Let him download your part, where you're going to serve. What's your vision for your family? What's your vision for your marriage? What's your vision for your health, or your neighbors, or your family? All of those things, because we are carriers of the truth of the gospel. And it needs to be manifested in everything. Vision just helps us unify. It helps us bring focus and purpose. And when the kingdom of God and the Spirit of God gets in people, and they come together, in one mind and one accord, right? That power of agreement releases things in people for their personal life of growth, but also the ministry growth and expansion for Jesus. So I think it's very important that I do it at the beginning of the year in a very intentional way. With fasting, you're getting, if you notice the church, when your church is fasting, the prayer, the worship gets more intense. Mm-hmm. The longer you're in the fast, the more. Why? Because the veil between the spirit realm and the natural realm is shortening, because they're spending more time in the presence of God. The journey from the outer court to the Holy of Holies short.
Yeah.
So they move quickly into it. And what does that mean? That means you have more time for God to speak to them and to deposit fresh vision and passion.
Yeah.
And so it's all very important, And then we have a beast feast. And what is that? That's the celebration of a 21-day fast of unity together over the vision and the plan and the Word of God. What is the Word of God? And we just celebrate it. So that's how we do it.
So good. I think a couple things I'd add is when we have new initiatives birthed out of a word from God, I've learned to sometimes roll that out to different groups of people at different times. And the reason I think that's important is there's these stats about 20, 60, 20. You got 20% of people that are early adopters. You got 20% of the people that are probably never going to get on board. And then you got that 60% that can be persuaded by one of the 20% on either end, right? And so something I found effective for major new vision initiatives, not always, but major new vision initiatives, is to really identify who are my leaders and influential people that are part of that 20% early adopters that will be a voice to carry that vision and be enrollers for that 60% that can be persuaded on either end, and sit there and unroll it in that manner. So I'll roll it out to my staff, because if my leadership team's not on board, it's pointless, right? And I get them involved, and then I go to that next group, that 20%, say, not exactly number, but it's an idea of a group of people. Roll it out to them, and then ultimately go to everybody. And I found oftentimes that works really well. The other thing that I found about vision is vision really speaks to the heart of people. It touches emotion. And I think God does that. When he speaks a word to us, he shows us the mountaintop. We don't see the valleys in between, but he's like, hey, here's what's possible if you walk with me. And it gets us all excited. Really, it draws our hearts and our lives into it. And I've found that one effective way of communicating vision is not to lead with, hey, here's what we're going to do, but to lay out a reason why. What you need to be done, what needs to be done, needs to be done. Like, you present the need, a compelling reason why that draws the hearts of people into vision before you say what. Because if you lead with the what, all you do is create questions like, why in the world are we going to be doing this? That sounds crazy. But if you capture them with the need, the why this needs to be done, then you become an invitation to people to engage with that vision. Because the reality is every vision God gives us requires provision in some shape, fashion, or form, right? And oftentimes, as pastors and leaders, we're doing that thing we get accused of and inviting people to give. Well, yeah, we are, but not to what we want to do, what God's called us to do, to make a kingdom impact. And Bishop Miller said something one time. He goes, he told me, I'll never forget it. money doesn't follow need, it follows vision. And so if we can learn to lead with vision that has a compelling reason why, then we become an invitation for people to partner with us. And God's going to speak to their hearts because the provision really is already there. It's just a matter of casting the vision before the people that can partner with you.
Yeah, the prophetic declaration draws it. That's what I've found out through the years. The other thing I think it's important to talk about is I call it basically spiritual compound interest, or you called it trust. Leading a church for 28 years from the beginning, where there may have been more doubts or questions early on. Is God really saying that? When you have a track record of consistency, they asked Einstein, theory of relativity, man, they said that blows mine. That just has blown everybody's mind. But what blows your mind? He said, compound interest blows my mind. That's what Einstein said. Why? Because you take a little bit that you do over a long period of time, and over time, it gets to a certain place where all of a sudden it begins to make big jumps, right? Finances. It's the same thing with vision. Vision, you build on common, where when you say something they've never heard, there's a vision, there's a word from God. And maybe they've been in ministry, but they've never heard kingdom vision. And all of a sudden they begin to hear it, and they may question it, almost like Mary. She held it in her heart. But then over time, people see it, hey man, we did it. That happened. What was declared happened. It happened again that year. It happened again. So what happens is, what I have found is over the year, as you build trust and a track record, that I don't have to win people over. They're excited. What is God saying? What can we get behind? And so it is not an uphill battle of change. The culture is ready to receive a fresh word. They are excited about what God's doing because we celebrate what he did, and then we point them into where God's taking us. And their faith is as strong as mine, and their passion is as strong as mine. And we move together into the things of God with expectation. And I think that's the culture that is a kingdom culture, and that's up to us to cultivate in the values there. So,
well, and you talked about earlier, Pastor Ryan, when you said provision, and Pastor Lonnie, when you're talking about the years, right? And we're obviously in the few years, but you don't have provision. Provision shows up because there's a vision, and the prefix pro, it means to expand. And we've learned that because when we moved here, we had $1,200 in a Voyage Church bank account, and the local coffee shop owner, we had never had any service or anything. He hears we're planting a church. He said, hey, do you guys want to buy boxed lunches for all the teachers at the elementary school? And my wife goes, yeah. How much is it? I was like, you should have asked how much is it before you said yeah. Well, it was over half of what we had in the bank account. And Shauna was like, we're doing it, right? But hey, we want to meet the needs, right? We want to serve people. But ma'am, even if it's a little bit of provision, or if it's a lot of bit of provision, no matter what, it expands the vision, right? It increases your faith to believe for more. And so we're still in the early stages of that, but I can tell you, and if someone's watching that's leading and it's a few years, or you have a vision to plant something, every little bit truly expands, and then just allow it to stretch you. And I'm constantly staying in the place and even telling our team, hey, are we actually putting our feet on water? Like, are we actually, we can't get to a place where we stay in a boat because we've built something nice. When was the last time you stepped out that if it doesn't feel solid, you're sinking? And we have to constantly be taking those steps, and provision shows up.
So good. Yeah, provision. If I'm not mistaken, there was a time when the provision was 5 simple barley loaves and 2 fish, but it kept expanding, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage somebody that's watching with that. God's giving you a great vision. You might be trying to figure out, where is this going to come from? What do you have? Because it's in the wise use of that and offering it to God that God's going to multiply and to provide. So we could talk about this leading with vision forever. It's one of my passions. I love talking about this and finding out how other people lead with vision. But Pastor John, Pastor Lonnie, thank you so much for investing your time. For all those that are listening to the DNA podcast today, I know they appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So I just want to say again, thank you for joining the DNA podcast. We want to be a blessing to you. We want to stand alongside of you in what God's called you to do. Destiny Network is honored to do that. DNA podcast is honored to be a part of what God's doing through your life. God bless you.